Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, welcome to the program. How you doing? Yeah. Every morning I wake up and I think, what could possibly go wrong? My God in heaven. Okay, so guys, there's something, and we are so far beyond the point at which I should be engaged in any Schadenfreude. Forgive my lack of proper Germanic pronunciation, but in terms of seeing Trump's backers, followers now fulminating and apoplectic. I mean, the desire to engage in some cackling at their ridiculous astonishment at what is happening and what he has wrought, and is of course, I mean, it's I was going to say laughable, but of course, as with Schadenfreude, it just isn't anything really to take any pleasure in, and it's certainly not really anything that is or should be amusing to us. But like seeing the National Review, for instance, a right-wing rag of long standing and generally considered the product of serious conservative intellectual thought. They are beyond apoplexy. And again, you just sort of wonder, what did they think they were going to be getting when they, one would assume, aided and abetted the rise of this man. So I just want to share with you, in case you missed it, some of the words, the verbiage coming out of the National Review in the last day or two. They're begging the Congress to take back some power. They have said, here's the quote, "It's preposterous that a single person could enjoy this much power over the global economy." Yeah, I mean, of course. Who wouldn't agree? But he's the guy who said he'd be dictator on day one. They fulminate against what they call the raw chaos that has been unleashed, and how it is virtually impossible for any business, big, huge corporations or small, little family-owned businesses, to have any idea what they should plan for, what their futures will be. They have ground everybody to a halt. And they write this: "What has happened since last Thursday is hard to fathom, based on an ever-shifting series of rationales characterized by an embarrassing methodology and punctuated with an extraordinary arrogance toward the country's constitutional order. The Trump administration has alienated our global allies, discombobulated our domestic businesses, decimated our capital markets, and increased the likelihood of serious recession. You know, it's not often that I agree with the National Review. But everything they just listed there he telegraphed beforehand. Everything he listed there, how come I knew would be the result of a second Trump presidency? How could they have been so willfully clueless? And as I said, the National Review, these are fine minds. Yeah. So, yeah, there's that. And it bears noting, of course, that the European Union, I guess just moments ago, has now hit back. You know, it's like a crazed game of poker. We raise you this, I'll raise you that, and see, I'll raise it. And it's like, this is what he has kicked off. I mean, what the hell is the tariff going to end up being on goods from China? 750%? I mean, where does this, I don't know, end other than in a lot of people, regular people, and people who voted for this SOB suffering? Suffering financially, suffering in other ways. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. And it's interesting to see the Chinese reaction. While you see an awful lot, in fact, most countries desperately and terrifying, they're terrified, and they are, trying to uh, saying, well, we'll negotiate with you. I mean, they're doing what Trump intends in setting off this war. And it is, of course, a war set off by a bully boy. He is in every way a classic bully. And it is true that bullies are bullies because they know most people, and in this case, most countries, will acquiesce out of fear of the bully and what that bully can do to them. And the United States, in its newfound role as bully boy of the universe, is a formidable bully, no doubt about it. Recognized by all as the preeminent power on the globe since World War II, we are the big guy on the block, and we have enjoyed generally a reputation as being a pretty good big boy on the block. But not now. And that's now all gone. Trump has always made clear he wants to be feared. And now, as the embodiment of our own nation, He wants us. He doesn't care if we're loved or respected or any of that bull. He wants us to be feared. But the Chinese ain't going to be bullied. It's just not something they will do. Because they understand this game. And they do not perceive themselves as weak. And in fact, on a blog that is associated with the Chinese state news agency, there was this quote: "The weaker you are, the happier the United States is, and the harder it will hit you." They get it. And they're not going to do what all these other frightened and less powerful, understandably, countries are doing. Acting fearful, which only makes Trump want to bully more. The Chinese will not be bullied. And that's why, of course, they have hit back with an 84% tariff on us. And this leads nowhere good for anybody. The Chinese official remarks about this war the United States started says the US move to escalate tariffs on China is a mistake upon a mistake. It seriously infringes upon China's legitimate rights and interests and undermines the rule-based multilateral trading system. Now, the fact that this trade war is escalating, and escalating especially between the world's two biggest economies, means that tensions between these two great nations are only growing, and that ain't good. Because you got these two powerful guys standing off, neither willing to take a step back to de-escalate, certainly not Donald Trump. And where, tell me, does it lead? It's going to be something. And then, you know, our bully boy, Donald Trump, it's, you know, the Chinese at least present themselves with a gravitas, right, befitting people and nations engaged in struggles this huge, playing with the lives of billions of human beings. At least the Chinese comport themselves in what seems an understandable posture. But the man who represents us bestrides the world stage as a clown. truly a laughable, lousy clown. A man so bereft of any comprehension of what it is to behave honorably, bereft of any moral core, bereft of any capacity for thoughtfulness, for seriousness, only made up, it seems, of pure ego and id, of a narcissistic need for attention and power that is the only thing about him that is awesome. So last night, there is the President of the United States of America having set off a global economic war, and he is having a party. And he gets up to speak. And he speaks for over 2 hours, reminiscent of others with huge egos, right? You fill in the dictator, autocrat, tyrant for 2 hours. And we know what he sounds like when he's babbling, incoherent. Just this constant lie after lie, fantasy after fantasy. And so he was telling stories to the crowd about how leaders of other countries were begging him, supplicants on their knees, begging him to stop. What can I do? And he said this. This is the man who America elected to represent us. Last night he said, "These countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They're dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir." And then I'll see some rebel Republican, some guy that wants to grandstand saying, "I think that Congress should take over negotiations." Let me tell you, you don't negotiate like I negotiate. Kissing my ass. Please, please, sir. And he went on to say, "I really think we are helped a lot by this tariff situation that's going on," which is a good situation, not a bad. It's great. It's going to be legendary. You watch. Legendary. It's gonna be legendary. Let's hope not. Because, I don't know, I'm no economic expert, but my sense tells me that if it is going to be legendary, it's going to be legendary in a bad way. in a really bad way. I want to share with you two things that are sort of heavy. And I've been wanting to share both of them for some time and just, haven't gotten around to them because they're sort of heavy. But I really think there's something that we as individuals in this time need to know and or consider, think about. Because you're such a smart bunch, I suspect some of you have already read these things and or come across them. But I'll beg you to indulge me in case you haven't. The one is written by a guy who is with the organ, the bulwark, and I'm assuming that's something that a lot of you do read, Jonathan V. Last. And I think he wrote this. It's about maybe a week old. But Jonathan V. Last, has been, like so many of us, has been looking at the destruction of so many things that we took for granted. And one in particular that has just astonished him, as it has me, is our absolute gutting of the relationship we have always had with Canada, our closest neighbor. And it's a destruction that was unlike a lot of the stuff that like the National Review was squawking about. It wasn't something that he talked about much. If he did, I don't recall it. It wasn't anything that was on my list of things that I'm assuming is going to happen with this clown in power. It seemed so ridiculous because it was so, unnecessary. It insane. And then, of course, his blowing up of the world order uh, that we have known in our lifetimes, the post World War II order. He's blown it up. It's gone. I think some people are in real denial, but it's gone. It's what the National Review was saying. How can one man? But he did. And so Jonathan Last thinks, and I suspect he's right, that a lot of people are just because of our need for sort of self preservation, self defense, we sort of are not quite coming to terms with what has happened, this destruction. And he says quite clearly, this is a tragedy, and it is the new reality. And just like that, the age of American empire, the great Pax Americana, has ended. Let me read some of what he has said. We cannot overstate what has just happened. It took just 71 days for Donald Trump to wreck the American economy, mortally wound NATO, and destroy the American-led world order. He did this with the enthusiastic support of the entire Republican Party and conservative movement. He did it with the support of a plurality of American voters. He did not hide his intentions. He campaigned on them. He made them the central thrust of his election. He told Americans that he would betray our allies and give up our leader position in the world. There are only three possible explanations as to why Americans voted for this man. One, they wanted what he promised. Two, they didn't believe what he promised. Or three, they didn't understand what he promised. Pick whichever rationale you want, because it doesn't matter. Whatever the reason was, it exposed half of the electorate, the 77 million people who voted for Trump, as either fundamentally unserious, decadent, or weak. And no empire can survive the degeneration of its people. And understand this, there is no going back. If tomorrow Donald Trump revoked his entire regime of tariffs, it would not matter. It might temporarily delay some economic pain, but the rest of the world now understands that it must move forward without us. If tomorrow Donald Trump abandoned his quest to annex Greenland and committed himself to the defense of Ukraine and the perpetuation of NATO, it would not matter. The free world now understands that its long-term security must be made with the understanding that America is a potential adversary, not an ally. This realization may be painful for Americans, but we should know that the rest of the world understands us more clearly, perhaps, than we understand ourselves. Vladimir Putin bet his life that American voters would be weak and decadent enough to return Donald Trump to the presidency. And he was right. Europeans are moving ahead with their own security plans because they realize, as a French minister put it, we simply cannot leave the security of Europe in the hands of voters in Pennsylvania every 4 years. And he's right. The Canadian Prime Minister declared the age of American leadership over, and he was right. Instead of arguing with this reality or denying it, we need to face it. There is more, but I just think that so many people have refused to take in what we have lost, what we have done, what has happened. And the irrevocability of much of it. So, that does not mean we do not fight to get back what we can. But we will have to work for well beyond generations to ever approach getting back what Trump and his bunch and the fools who put them in power have destroyed. I mean, it's we all understand on just a personal level how trust, once destroyed, is so hard to get back. And even if it is somewhat gotten back, it's never the same. We betrayed the trust that so many in the world, nations, people, placed in us. We destroyed it. In a little over 2 months. Prettiest, as Trump likes to say, truly legendary. Legendary. So, I have seen a lot of people reacting to what Last wrote and finding it difficult to deny what he has written, but then falling back into this sort of essential, need for optimism, for hope that somehow this will not be as irrevocable as it appears. But um, personally, I don't see it. So the other thing is it's about Elon Musk. And who knows? It could be that Musk is now finally the sort of the Musk era, the Musk political era might be starting to end. Excuse me while I take a swig. I don't know. But the damage he has done is also, uh, in many ways, irrevocable. This man who was one of the surprises, perhaps, for even those of us who thought we knew what might happen. I don't know that anybody, calculated the level of power that would be given to this damaged man who, in so many ways, has the same emotional, the crippled emotional makeup of Trump. It's, I suspect, why they were able to so quickly develop this bromance. But there, and here again, I suspect some of you have seen this or read it, but a professor of history and law at Harvard, and also a writer for the New Yorker, Jill LePore, has, I don't think it's a book. Is it a book? I think it's a podcast. I think it's on, you can listen to it because a friend of mine sent it off to me, called X-Man, the Elon Musk origin story. And it is eye-opening. And the little bit that I have ingested, takes in, I mean, this is mind-blowing to me. You know, both of these men, Trump and Musk, are the direct results of the men, the powerful men in their families. With Trump, his father. With Musk, his grandfather. And it's the grandfather that I did not know of. I knew slight things. I knew that Musk's mother came from Canada, but the story's a lot more complicated. And it's Musk's mother's father that is the man who clearly put himself in his grandson's head. And Musk has incorporated in just extraordinary ways the mindset of the grandfather. So you got to know about the grandfather. And he's one scary, effed up fellow. LePore points out that where Musk is coming from is nothing new politically. His ideas, which sometimes seem so fanciful, you know, we're all going to go to Mars, whatever. The way he views government and all of that, the way he so eagerly took a sledgehammer to it, turns out it's his grandfather who taught him. And she writes, LePore, about how astonishing it is, how so many of the ideas about governance, about economics, about politics seem taken out of whole cloth out of his grandfather's views. His name was Joshua Haldeman. He was a conspiracy theorist. He was a larger-than-life character. And he was a leader of a political movement known as technocracy. And I'm talking here about 100 years ago. I'm talking about the early years of the Great Depression. This is when the technocrats and their ideas gained favor. And what the technocrats, and again, a leader of them was Musk's grandfather. What they proposed was replacing democratically elected. First, they hated democracy. They absolutely knew that democracy could not work. They proposed replacing civil servants, officials elected by the people, the government. They wanted what was called a technate. And it was populated by people like them. Men, white, scientific engineering types. Guess what? They wanted to annex Mexico. The ones in America wanted to annex Canada. What they believed was that human beings would no longer even have names. This so dovetails with how Musk treats people. They would have numbers. We humans would have numbers or letters. Recall that Musk named one of his sons X A12. That boy that you see him with, I think that's X, isn't it? Haldeman, the grandfather, who was the movement's leader in Canada, he was number 10450-1. I kid you not. Now, these technocrats, as I said, got some attention, but they ended up obviously splintering and whatever. The New York Times published more than 100 stories about the movement just in 4 months' time, between November of 32 and March of 1933. The New York Times published more than 100 stories about these crazy people. They preached that life in their world in a technocracy would be totally different from life in a democracy. And there would be no such thing as popular voting. Democracy was a failure. And they had a pamphlet. I mean, this is all written down. So they explained how that technocrats do not subscribe to the basic tenet of the democratic ideal, namely that all men are created equal. And they went on to say that no, it's only people like us, intelligent, educated people, who understand how things work, who must be in charge. They wrote this: even our postal system, our highways, our coast guards could be made much more efficient. Agencies could be shuttered. 90% of the courts could be abolished. How fascinating that just a decade shy of 100 years later, his grandson would have the capacity and the power to try to implement, in some part, his crazy grandfather's dream. LePore says this: Musk's grandfather was a technocracy stalwart. In 1940, when Canada banned the organization Technocracy Incorporated out of fear that its members were actively plotting to undermine the Canadian government and the effort against fascism, Musk's grandfather took out an ad in a Canadian newspaper proclaiming technocracy as a national patriotic movement. And then weeks later, he tried to enter the United States for a speaking tour and was denied entry at the border, probably because of a new passport regulation that barred travel into the United States to aliens whose entry would be contrary to the public safety. Would that we had done the same with his grandson. So back to Canada he went, and in Vancouver he gets himself arrested, convicted, and sentenced to jail. Upon his release, he joined an anti-Semitic party called the Social Credit Party and became the national chairman in Canada. That's when he started thinking about leaving Canada, this disgusting democratic state, and going to South Africa. It was 1948, after World War II, that South Africa formally instituted apartheid. That looked like heaven to this guy. And so in 1950, he moved to South Africa. That's where his daughter met her husband, Musk, and produced this vile offspring, Elon. The grandfather was an extraordinary nutcase, in case that hasn't been made clear. He believed that those of us in the West had been subjects of a, quote, intensive mass mind conditioning experiment in which ludicrous ideas like the equality of the races and the immorality of apartheid were spread by newspapers and radio and television and university professors. If you look at the grandfather's writings and his beliefs, and then look at Elon Musk, it's just astonishingly an overlap. Because Elon Musk clearly holds the same beliefs about social engineering, about economic planning that his grandfather did. And when Musk first left South Africa, he went to Canada to be with his grandfather's family. And LePore clearly states that much that Musk has attempted to do with Doge can be found right in the technocracy manuals of the early 1930s. And then it turns out that, in Silicon Valley, where Muskism has a foothold, just 2 years ago, one of Musk's crowd, the venture capitalist Mark Andreessen, who, by the way, has helped in the Doge staffing effort, wrote a manifesto called the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. And he predicts, this is Musk's pal, predicts the emergence of technological supermen. Of course, he's thinking of Musk and all the Silicon Valley bros. And here is part of it. I read it to you. We can advance to a far superior way of living and of being. We have the tools, the systems, the ideas. We have the will. We believe this is why our descendants will live in the stars. We believe in greatness. We believe in ambition, aggression, persistence, relentlessness, and strength. Now, this Andreessen is very clear about where his inspiration came from when he wrote this. And it came from another manifesto that was written in the last century, the early last century, in 1909, by a guy named Filippo Tommaso Marinetti. This is an Italian, and he wrote something called the Futurist Manifesto in 1909, and let me read some of that to you. We want to sing the love of danger, the habit of energy and rashness. We want to exalt movements of aggression, feverish sleeplessness, the double march, the perilous leap, the slap, and the blow with the fist. We want to sing the man at the wheel. We want to demolish museums and libraries, fight morality, feminism. Standing on the world summit, we launch once again our insolent challenge to the stars. You get in a kind of really fucked up creepy, toxic masculine vibe here in any of these? Yeah. Well, that was written in 1909, inspiring this other manifesto written in 1923, right here. And 10 years after the 1909 screed was written, the same guy, Marinetti, wrote the founding document of the movement that was led by Mussolini, the Fascist Manifesto. Make no mistake about what we are right now seeing. Make no mistake about where these people who have so much power now in our country are coming from. They are coming from a place that we know, we've seen rise before. And we've seen people die by the millions fighting it before. And now, unbelievably, these people are in control of the United States of America. Yeah. Now, those of you who say, and you've said it to me, I just can't listen to this anymore. Fine, then don't. You think it'll go away? I mean, I don't know how many ways I can say, suck it up. We are a decadent, unserious people. And we are very, very vulnerable because we have not known real struggle. And if we fail to understand and recognize the unbelievable seriousness of this moment in our lives and the life of our country, then I can only say that we deserve what we reap. And it will be something. the fascists have their foot in the door and then some. These emotionally crippled bully boys, fearful of real freedom, fearful of ideas, fearful of the power of people, loving pure aggression. They are right now in control of the apparatus of our nation, and they have done extraordinary, and as I have said, irreparable destruction, which continues as I speak. So, speaking of Nazis, noticed, not that I want to give it any publicity, but it's astonishing to me. I had not heard of this guy, but I want to tell you about a guy who I guess some people think is a comedian. I don't think he's a comedian because I don't think there's anything funny about where he's coming from. His name is Sam Hyde, Hyde, and he had a very short-lived show on the Cartoon Network uh, called World Peace, and it was short-lived because it was called out as what it was, which was a racist alt-right show aimed at, uh, well, the guys who now have taken control. And when the clueless folk at Cartoon Network realized what they were promoting, they did cancel this hateful show. But Sam Hyde is going to be here in Pittsburgh this weekend, appearing at Hop Farm Brewing Company in Lawrenceville. And what's particularly distressing about this anti-Semite, this misogynist, this racist, and he's open about all of this stuff. It's where his humor comes from. He is going to be appearing in Lawrenceville on the first night of Passover. As a Jew, I must say it's disconcerting enough to know that he has been given this stage here in my city, but that on the first night of this most wondrous Jewish holiday. Oh, shut the fuck up. That he will be what a guy like this does. I mean, he laughs about women being raped. He's made jokes about the Jews who were murdered, massacred at Tree of Life. This is how vile he is. He bemoans the fact that so many white people don't understand the danger that Jews are. He's a misogynist to the core. And when he was asked about whether or not World Peace, this show he had on the Cartoon Network, whether or not it was a neo-Nazi sketch show with a neo-Nazi following, he said, yeah, that's probably accurate. Our fans are pretty dialed in. I won't wash my hands of it. So he's very out front about it. It's amazing to me. And Jews will not be able to be protesting outside this location, the Hop Farm Brewing Company, the night that he's there, because they will be gathered together with their families, celebrating the Seder. The same meal, of course, that Jesus celebrated with his apostles, known as the Last Supper. Pay attention. That's all I'm saying. Pay attention. Doesn't mean you can't live your lives. Doesn't mean you can't laugh. Doesn't mean you can't love. Doesn't mean all of that stuff. In fact, I think it means you love more fiercely. But as Eric just wrote here in chat, mostly, you resist. Mostly, resist.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.